Okay, what is the things here? Good, Hari Bol. Jai Radha Madhava, Jai Kunja Bihari,
Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari,
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Giridharadhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Girivaradhari.
Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana,
Yashodhanandana Brajjana Ranjana,
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari.
Gaur Pimanande Hari Hari
Very
Bo.
bold.
Okay. Assume here is okay. So, who else is present today?
Only 5 of us.
Sugopi Mati didn't join.
She didn't
Okay,
join.
it's just Saki is there. Such there. Okay. Please go ahead with Mangalacharan and presentation, Roji. You can
Om
request the.
Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatamitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitamscha Namo Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Panchatattvatvakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Pranami Bhakta Shaktikam नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरतिसे नमः हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपः सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Can see my screen correctly? Only one screen, yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
ॐ नारायण नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदिरेत् शृण्वतं सकतः कृष्णा पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्थो हि अभद्राणि विधनोति शुभ्रश्रुतं नष्टप्रायशबद्धेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय So today we'll do the Canto 4, Chapter 23, which is the last part of the parts, which is the last chapter of the part C. And this with this chapter, we will end the stories about Maharaja Prithu. So this chapter is Maharaja Prithu's going back home. So it is divided into four parts. Need to move this one somewhere. How do I minimize that? So so there is basically Maharaja Prithu's Vanaprastha life, then how Archie basically takes some Samayagna, this Sati, and then she is praised by demigods' wives and Falashruti. So the chapter is very simple, but there are a lot of purports by Srila Prabhupada in this chapter. So, okay. As I said, there are four chapters. The 39 text in this chapter. 1 to 18 basically covers about Maharaja Prithu's Vanaprastha life, austerities, and departure. 19 to 22, basically Archie performs funeral rites and enters into flames. 23 to 30, the demigod's wives praise Archie. And 31 to 39 is Falashruti. So background for this chapter. So in this previous chapter, we read how Prithu Maharaj ruled gloriously the entire earth and also obviously the various wonderful qualities. And now we will hear how we left this planet. So if we, the one of the, like from the earlier sections when we read about Dhruva Maharaj, how we left the planet is totally different from how Prithu Maharaj left the planet. We can see the contrast when we read about this one. So again, so text 1 to 18. Maharaja Prithu retires. So realizing his old age, Prithu, the maintainer of all living kinds of living entities, having executed the orders of the Lord, handed over the earth to his sons. Then he went to the forest with his wife while the citizens lamented in separation. So, do we know any other character who basically handed over the reins of the earth to his sons and then retired to the forest from Bhagavatam?
Pandavas, right?
Pandavas are not in that way in Bhagavatam, but like one
Jadabharat.
king.
Jadbharat.
No, not Jadabharat, Maharaja Bharat. Jadabharat was not a king, but Maharaja Bharat.
Sorry. Yes, Maharaj. Bharat.
So basically, he also did the same thing that once he just figured out that, okay, yes, reigned for a long time, he basically handed over the earth to his sons and then he went to the forest. He didn't went with his wife, but he went to the forest to basically practice meditation. So a few of the points that we can understand here is that he divided his opulence amongst all living entities, and that included living and non-living actually. Okay, and then arranged for pensions for everyone according to religious principles. So it's not like he just went away. He basically ensured that people who are serving, maybe like the Brahmanas who are serving the Lords or like other people who are serving, they are getting money and they don't have to work and they can continue their service. And dedicated his sons to rule the earth, whom he considered his daughter. So he considered the earth as his daughter, and he dedicated his sons to rule the earth, right? Now, Maharaja Prithu went with his wife to perform austerities in the forest. Do you know any other example where somebody went for Vanaprastha with their wife from Bhagavatam, from the first canto?
Dhritarashtra and Gandhari?
Yes, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, correct. Right? So Prabhupada mentions that when we get old, like so in general, if we take in the Kali Yuga at least, when we take our age of life is like 25, 50, 75, 100. Considering that an average person used to live for 100 years, not now, but then first 25 years is considered for Brahmachari ashram. That 26 to 50 is for like Grihastha, then 51 to 75 is Vanaprastha, and then 75 to 100 technically be Sannyasa, or you continue to be Vanaprastha, right, in a way. So Prabhupada mentions that one should not simply remain at home, but retire in a timely manner and prepare to go back to Godhead. He mentioned it's very difficult to retire from family life and at the same time remain at home. Can anybody tell me what are, like we are all in US, America, right? What are the challenges for us to retire in a timely manner and take Vanaprastha? What is the challenge that we have?
Too much attraction in material life and comfort.
Okay. Anything else?
Luxurious life.
Okay. Anything else?
Taking care of the family, Prabhuji. So this one is there, and the next something else is there. Keeps coming.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel at least in US, I feel one of the biggest challenges is that we have to continue working to maintain our medical insurance. Without like most of the people like to maintain have some insurance or something. They basically have to keep on working, or like unless you have made wealth, like so some people have made money in stock market, etc. It's very very difficult to retire because the cost of living is very high, right? But if you are in India, for example, right, you could easily retire because there are so many people or so many ashrams or etc. where you don't have to worry about food. You can stay there, like you can get a stay in the corner of the place, and then you can continue devotional. So many people do that. They go to Kashi, they go to Badri Ashram, they go to Vrindavan, Govardhan, right? And they stay there and try to uh, basically retire from family life and then just focus on this thing, right? But for us, we think that okay, we are attached to our family, we have to take care of our kids. Like I sometimes talk to devotees, they say, "Oh no, but your kids are growing. We need to ensure that they are settled. They have to get married, etc. Then they get married, then they will get kids, and then when they get kids, then we'll play with the kids, and we'll so basically like in Vaja Govindam prayer, right? Where the song Shankaracharya says that in the like when you're like, growing, when it's a small kid, you're busy playing. When you're a youth, you're basically taking care of your family. When you grow old, you're taking care. I mean, you're attracted to other things when you take the name of Krishna. Right? Similarly, although we are in a devotional path, but still, it's very, very difficult for us to retire from the family life because to break away the attachment is very difficult. I can take, for example, my like this week was my elder daughter's birthday. So my father like is nearly 80, but we have to cut a cake for us. So they brought a cake and then they cut the cake through video chat and all those things. So that attachment that I mean we are still materially bonded. I have to take care of my family. I have to like wish them, do that, all those things, right? That is one of the biggest hindrance, right? So family life, as many of you said, is very, very difficult. And so if you stay in that same family, unless you can detach yourself, it's going to be difficult to retire actually, because if somehow or the other you will be involved, right? So basically, so many of us are like in that age where we have to start thinking of retiring and saying, okay, how do I ensure that I cut that bond and focus on the spiritual life? Okay, so this is so I use this time. I use a lot of ChatGPT, try to use it. I used try to draw some images and also for the conclusion, etc. I tried to use ChatGPT. So this is one of the image of Prithu Maharaj and Harchi doing some penance in the forest. Okay. So now we'll discuss about Maharaja Prithu's austerities. Somebody wants to read this?
Yeah, I can read.
Hare Krishna, I will read Prabhuji.
Okay.
423.4 Severity. He underwent severe austerities according to Vanaprastha rules as seriously as he had formerly engaged in leading the government and conquering everyone. To control the mind and senses, one has to engage in devotional service fully. He followed the rules of Vanaprastha life, also known as Vaikansha Ashrama. Hare Krishna.
So Prabhupada mentions in the purport that, a lot of people do austerity. Right? You can, like, for example, we have even great asuras who did austerities. Like we have Ravana who did austerities. We had Hiranyakashipu who did austerities. But doing austerities is not the end in itself to practice vanaprastha, right? Like, for example, all these Jain people we have, they do a lot of austerities. Like when they take the monkhood, they pull their hairs out. They don't cut their hair. Like what we do in our brahmacharya ashram is we go to the barber and take our hair out. They don't do that. They basically pull their hair out, right? They will wear a very minimal dress. So they do austerities. But that austerity in itself is not vanaprastha. One has to control their mind and senses, and one has to engage in devotional service fully. So basically, you will come to know when we read this purports, Prabhupada again and again mention the same practice. Although this chapter is about Prithu Maharaj doing austerities, but why is he doing that austerity? Is that the end in itself, or there is something bigger thing to that? And the bigger thing is one has to engage in the devotional service fully. So we'll see what type of austerities he performed in the next few verses. Okay. So anybody wants to read this? What he ate?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
4.23.5 Eating. In Tapovana, he sometimes ate roots, sometimes fruits and dried leaves, and for some weeks he drank only water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air. He did not eat any cooked food sent from the city, but sustained on what was available there. He ate only to sustain his body. Living in forest is mode of goodness. One has to surpass that. Living in temple is similar to living in Vaikuntha, or make your home a temple. A Krishna conscious person doesn't need to go to forest and imitate the great sages, Maharaj Prithu. One can follow the footsteps of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura by living in a temple, which is transcendental to residence in a forest, and to vow to accept Krishna Prasada and nothing else. Follow the regulative principles and chant 16 rounds daily of the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way, one's spiritual life will never be disturbed.
So this is okay. So before we go to the discussion, so do you recollect anybody else doing this type of austerity? Eating roots or dried leaves or just drinking water or breathing air only?
Dhruva Maharaj.
Dhruva Maharaj, right? He also did the similar austerity, right? So Prabhupada makes a comment here that like sometimes what happens is that there are people who become like sadhus or take sort of vanaprastha, but they will have all these delicious dishes being cooked by their disciples or somebody else from the village and he'll feast on it. Right? He says, I mean, that is not the way of vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means minimize eating and maximize your chanting in a way, right? So we have to eat only to sustain our body, right? And so this one point is that living in the forest is mode of goodness, right? So Prabhupada has three points. It's the mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. So living in the forest is mode of goodness. Living in like a city or something is in the mode of passion. And being in a brothel or like a liquor place or all those things, like tamasic guna is mode of ignorance, right? But one has to go beyond the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And so that's what the earlier verse we said. Just doing austerities or living in a forest is not an end in itself. One has to go beyond that, and that is being a devotee, right? So either you live in a temple, right? Or you can make your home a temple. So if you're able to do all the services, because in today's world, there are not too many, especially in US, we don't have temples that can take care of us. When Prabhupada started the movement, his whole idea was people will live in the temple, etc. But now that is not the case. I mean, we don't have grihastha staying in temple. Many people still take houses near Mayapur, Vrindavan, etc. Some people are lucky enough to stay there. Some people just go once in a while, right? The better is for us to make our home a temple and ensure that we can follow the practice, follow the principles of vanaprastha here, right? And the important thing here is that we don't have to imitate all those things. Like we don't have to go to this forest and do all these austerities. We can simplify our love by following the regulative principles and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Then our spiritual life will not be disturbed. So do service, serve the Vaishnavas, serve the deities, etc. Then we can continue our process, right? So this is again Prithu Maharaj eating some roots and fruits, leaves, etc. in the forest whenever he wants to maintain his body. So now we'll see what type of austerities he performed. So in different seasons, like basically we have technically three seasons. We have summer, we have monsoon, and we have winter in India, right? In the US we have multiple seasons, but technically we have three seasons. So in summer, he placed fires around himself and sat under the scorching sun, and basically he did his meditation there. In monsoons, he exposed himself to torrents of rain, and in winter, he stood in the water up to his neck in freezing water because then, right? So, and then he used to sleep on bare earth. So these are some of the austerities he performed, right? And Prabhupada mentions that these are the austerities performed by Gyanis and Yogis who cannot accept the process of Bhakti Yoga. So some people feel that, again, as I said, we discussed it, like some people feel that only doing austerities is the way itself. So we'll do that path. But the easier process is to just do. And why do we do this austerities? This is to purify ourselves from material contamination and then become a devotee. So why do we fast? Sometimes we fast on Ekadashi, we do Nirjala, we do like Narasimha Chaturdashi is coming, we're going to fast till dusk, right? There are two things we can do. We can fast because we are saying some people will fast because it's a rule. Some people will fast because it's as an offering to Krishna, right? But end of the day, we want to purify ourselves because one day we don't want to think about eating and drinking, but we want to focus on chanting the holy names of the Lord, read the past chapters, etc., and become more of a better devotee, right? So that is the whole idea of austerities. So Maharaja Prithu performed these austerities. You can see how he sat in a fire under the blazing sun or in a freezing water he used to be in winter. So this is some of the austerities he performed. Okay. So 423.7, austerities continued. Titikshur yata vagdanta urdhvaretha jitanila ariradha ishu krishnam acharat tapa uttamam. So he underwent all these austerities of controlling his words, senses, sexual impulse, and life airs only to satisfy Lord Krishna. See this verse, Maitreya Muni mentions that why is he doing this austerity, right? Ariradhyaishu Krishnam. Acharat Tapta Uttamam. Maharaja Amritu underwent severe types of austerities for the express purpose of worshipping Krishna. So there was no other mood in his mind. It was not to gain any mystic powers. It was not to do anything else or to show off. It was just to please Krishna. So all our austerities that we perform should be done with the express purpose of worshipping Krishna. So one can either go through these austerities or simply take up the process of chanting the holy names of Krishna and engage in devotional service. The only thing is one has to constantly engage in devotional service. So sometimes we think that okay, I chant 16 rounds, I'm done, right? But then what it is 2 hours, after 2 hours, what? We going back to our material world. Like I sometimes have to work 16, 12, 14 hours a day. And then somehow I just manage to do my chanting. But is that devotional service? No. We have to continuously engage in devotional service in some activity or the other to really, I mean, to basically understand that if sometimes like we read a verse from Bhagavatam saying, "Oh, Krishna say, sorry, we mentioned in the Bhagavatam that I don't have to perform any type of austerities, I don't have to do anything else, I just worship Krishna." But then we have to do constantly engage Nityam Bhagavad Seva. That is it, right? Otherwise, this we are just trying to be sort of a hypocrite. So that is very very important that we should remember. 423.8. So what were the results like by performing such austerities? What happened, right? Maharaja Prithu gradually became steadfast in spiritual life. He completely got free of all desires for fruitive activities, that is karma kanda activities, or the benefits of that. He could control his mind and senses by breathing exercises, pranayama, and he cut his bondage to the material world. All right, so he did these 4 things that he could do by practicing this way of austerity. So the purpose of pranayama is to stop the mind and senses from engaging in productive activities and not to make the body fit and strong for working on. So today, when we do yoga, we basically connect yoga, hatha yoga, pranayama, etc., with improving our health or making our body better and all those things, and enjoying material sense gratification. Yes, is it good? It is good to practice that to make our body fit, but the basic goal is to ensure that our mind and senses are not engaged in productive activities, but engaged in the service of Krishna. Unless the karmis, jnanis, and yogis come to the point of devotional service to Lord Krishna, their so-called austerities and yoga have no value. So all these austerities, even if we perform, but without the mood of coming to the devotional service, it's of no use. If Hari, the Supreme Personality God, is not worshipped, there is no point in practicing meditational yoga. Naraditaha. Performing karma yoga or cultural empiric knowledge. Or basically practicing meditation yoga, performing karma yoga, or getting some empirical knowledge. And as far as pranayama is concerned, chanting the holy names of the Lord and dancing in ecstasy are also considered pranayama. So basically, if we cannot practice the pranayama, then we should just chant and dance in the arti of the Lord or in kirtans, and that is automatically pranayama. And then what did he get? Unflinching devotion. He constantly worshipped the Lord by following the path of Adhyatma Yoga as taught to him by Sarat Kumar. Wrong word. Thus, his devotion to Krishna became unflinching and fixed. Purusharshava refers to Maharaja Prithu, the best among human beings, and Purusham refers to Supreme Personality God. The conclusion is that the best man amongst all the men engages in the service of the Supreme. A devotee who has engaged his life in devotional service, whether it's a neophyte or advanced, is already in a liberated state. So basically, if you have completely engaged our life in devotional service, doesn't matter if you're a newcomer or an experienced devotee, you are in the liberated stage. And the conclusion is that only the best among the people engage in the service of the Supreme Person. And that's why we have the sloka, right? What is it? 7th chapter, 3rd verse, Bhagavad Gita. One Manushanam Sahasreshu Etatam Yeta Siddhaye, right? Like only thousands of among only one come, because only the best man can completely engage in the service of the Lord and reach there. So now we'll read about Prithu destroys his subtle body, how he destroys it. Anybody wants to read the sloka? And somebody can read the translation. So Sudev, Sugopi, you want to read?
Okay, Prabhuji. Tasyanaya bhagavata parikarma shuddha sattvatmanastadanu samsmarananu purtya jnanam viraktimadabhunishitena yena cheda samshayapadam jivakosham. By such practice of bhakti, his mind became Shuddha Sattva and he could constantly think of Krishna. In his purified mind appeared Jnana and Vairagya, by which he destroyed the subtle body Jiva Kosham and transcendented all doubts. Thus he was free from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life. Because of his regular discharge of devotion service, a devotee attains the transcendental stage of life. Since his mind is transcendently situated, he cannot think of anything but the lotus feet of the Lord. This is the meaning of the word samsmarana anupurtya. By constantly thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord, the devotee immediately becomes situated in Shuddha Sattva. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So basically, it's like to overcome all our subtle body, right? So we have to be in a state of Shuddha Sattva. And how can we become Shuddha Sattva? By thinking constantly of the lotus feet of the Lord. So once we, when devotee is, so any person or devotee who is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord, right, automatically becomes a pure devotee, and then becomes situated Shuddha Sattva, and then he can basically go beyond the subtle body and transcend all these doubts, etc., and then he can become free from the clutches of false ego, because that is the most important thing. We consider ourselves as a body, right? That is the primary purpose of false ego. So go beyond that, and also the material consumption of life, and then we can become progress on the path of bhakti. 12. When he became completely free from the conception of bodily life, Maharaja Prithu realized Lord Krishna sitting in everyone's heart as a Paramatma. So now he could see that everywhere he could see the Paramatma in the heart. So anybody remembers the shloka from Bhagavad Gita which states that? Chapter 5. So nobody? It's mentioned, right, in the shloka that a person who has realized Lord can see the animal, like you see a cow, an elephant, a tiger, or even a chandala or dog eater as the same, because he can see the Lord in everybody's heart, right? So similarly, Pandita Samadarshana, yeah, forgot the starting one. But so Maharaja Prithu realized that Lord Krishna in everyone's heart as a Paramatma. Being
Yeah,
thus able to
Vidya
get
Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavyas.
Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Sorry, I forgot the starting. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. So being thus able to get all instructions from him, he gave up all other practices of yoga and jnana. He was not even interested in the perfection of the yoga and jnana system, that is attaining siddhis, for he thoroughly realized that devotional service to Krishna is the ultimate goal of life. Unless the yogis and jnanis become attracted to Krishna Katha or narrations about Krishna, their illusions concerning existence can never be dispelled. The perfection of life depends on one inclination to hear about Krishna. It is therefore mentioned in this verse, Yavat Gata Graja Katasu Pratibna Kuryat. Unless one becomes interested in Krishna, in his pastimes and activities, there is no question of liberation by means of yoga practice or speculative knowledge. So as a devotee, we are automatically in the path of Krishna Bhakti. So we are always eager to hear about Krishna, etc. But when one is practicing the form of karma kanda or yoga or jnana, they have to force themselves to understand the glories of Krishna. Otherwise, they'll still be stuck in the material world. So they can sometimes, like Gyanis can still go to Brahman realization, but after that, sometime later, they might again fall back into the material. And as we said, like when he started, so he did all these austerities, but at some point in time, he didn't wait for the perfection of yoga and jnana. Right? He could have continued his yoga and jnana and attained all the Ashtasiddhi and everything, but he was not interested in that. He basically stopped and focused on the devotional service to Krishna. In due course of time, when Maharaja Prithu was to give his body, he fixed his mind firmly upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus completely situated on the Brahma Bhota platform, he gave up the material body. It is thoroughly described in the following verses how one can voluntarily give up this body and return home back to Godhead. The yogic processes practiced by Maharaja Prithu at the time of death accelerates the giving up of his body while one is in sound health physically and mentally. Every devotee desires to give up the body while he is in sound physically and mentally. By situating oneself in the Muktasana position, a yogi can immediately give up his body and go to whatever planet he desires. A perfect yogi can give up his body whenever he desires through the practice of yoga. Prithu, being a pure devotee and a Shaktavesh avatar, did not have material, subtle, and gross bodies. This was done to set an example for the materialistic yogi. So, does anybody remember any yogi going from leaving his soul and going to a heavenly planet? Any picture? Any book?
Easy journey to other planets.
It might be there, but in Bhagavad Gita there is a picture. Do anybody remember?
Oh, yeah.
There is a yogi who is sitting, and from his
Mhm.
head, from the skull, his soul passes to the moon planet. It's showing it, like shown that way, right? So it is a very, very standard process of chakra and all those things, which is like a lot of yogis do it. But a real yogi will not want to go to a heavenly planet. He would basically want to go to the spiritual planets, right? So even it's mentioned during when the partial devastation occurs, many of the yogis, they go, the sadhus and sages go to the Brahmaloka, and they stay there, and from there they go back to Vaikuntha, right? So the idea is that the ultimate goal is not to enjoy more in the material world, but to go to spiritual planet. And one should try, and the most important thing is we should try to be healthy. Why? Because then we can remember the Lord when we at the time of death. Because if somebody is continuously engaged in the service of the Lord, then he automatically remembers that Krishna will take care of it. But somebody who is like not fully there, then at least it should be a prayer that when we leave this body, we are in sound health, so that we can try to remember when we leave the body. So sitting in Muktasana, Prithu Maharaj raised his life air from the Muladhara Chakra, NS, to Swadhisthana Chakra, navel, to Manipuraka Chakra, abdomen, to Anahata Chakra, heart, to Vishuddhi Chakra, throat, to Agnya Chakra, between the eyebrows. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chakras. And once it comes to the eyebrows, then it will basically break through the skull and go to the planets he desired, right? So the ultimate aim of yoga is to enable one to give up this body according to his own free will. Some desire to go to higher planetary systems. The intelligent ones go back home to Godhead. And one who is practicing devotional service, need not practice this Muktasana process. Basically, if you are constantly practicing devotional service, then you don't have to do this yoga processes, but just continue chanting and you'll automatically go to Godhead. So this is not Muktasana, but this is sort of a asana, but Masana doing, this Dubala is doing. Then Prathu gives up the gross body, merging the material body. So now he will merge the material body back into the element. So in the second canto, we read how the creation works, and you will see that the reverse process is followed, right? So I will just go to the last part. In second canto, fifth chapter, the process of creation explained the air from the sky, the fire from the air, the water from the fire, the earth from the water, and so on, right? Now they are reverse happens. In this way, Prithu Maharaj gradually raised his air of life up to the hole in his skull. This is called Brahmarandhara, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth, and the fire within his body with the totality of fire. According to the different positions of the various parts of the body, Prithu Maharaj merged the holes of his senses with the sky, his bodily liquid such as blood and various secretions with the pure water, and he merged earth with water, water with fire, fire with air, air with sky. So we can see it's a reverse process. So the creation goes from air from sky, fire from air, etc. Here he follows the reverse. Basically, he tried to merge all the elements back to their source. And that's how he gave up his body. Merging the subtle body, he merged the mind with the senses and the senses with the sense objects according to their respective positions. And he also merged the material ego with the ahankara, with the total material energy, Mahatattva. So ultimately, everything comes from Mahatattva. So finally, he basically gradually wound up and amalgamated within the Mahatattva himself. So when the mind is completely washed of all material contamination, the pure consciousness acts. Sound vibration from the spiritual sky, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra can automatically cleanse all material contamination. So all this is done to clear, remove all material contamination, all right? And the easiest way for us in this yuga is to do the chant the Hare Krishna Maha. Giving of the body, he placed the Mahatattva into Prakriti, gave the Prakriti by power of Jnana and Vairagya and by the force of Bhakti. In this way, being the controller of senses and already situated in Swarupa, Krishna consciousness, he gave up his body. So he is called controller of senses or Bhagavan, and that is because he was no longer influenced by material energy, not because he was Rishikesha or the Lord himself, but because he was no longer influenced by material energy, so he is called the controller of senses, right? So now Maharaj Prabhu completely gave up his body, and now we'll see what Archie did after that, right? Everybody knows who is Archie?
Yes.
Who was she?
Oh, Prithu Maharaj's wife.
And how was she born?
From the body of Vena.
In the body of Vena, along with Maharaja Prithu when they turned the body, right? So Archie performs funeral rites and enters into flames. So she did voluntarily. Archie voluntarily followed Prithu Maharaj into the forest and touched her lotus feet to the ground, despite being a queen with a delicate body which was unsuited for austerities. Do we know anybody who followed their husband to the forest and touched the lotus feet to the ground and which was unsuited for austerities? Do we know? And roamed all over the forest, stayed there for a few years.
Talking about Kunti and what was the
So we have example of Kunti,
Pandu
we have
and
we have Pandu and Kunti, we have Sita and Ram, we
not
have Draupadi,
Kunti, the other one.
Madri,
Madri. Yeah.
then we have Draupadi who followed, went with the husband. So there are a lot of examples in our scriptures where the wives went with their husband voluntarily into the forest, right? And why did she do this? Because she gained pleasure for service. It was not like she was forced to do it. She had pleasure. She got pleasure by serving her husband, right? Though she became thin by performing austerities like sages, she did not feel any pain because she derived pleasure in serving her husband. Do any example where a lady who was married to a sage performed and became very, very thin and by performing austerities, but she did it with pleasure?
Devahuti.
Devahuti, Kadamuni and Devahuti, yeah.
Right, right. So Prabhupada mentions here, a woman's duty or religious principle is to serve her husband in all conditions. She follows her husband when he retires from family life. But if he takes sannyasa, she should return back home and live a life of austerity. Because once her husband takes sannyasa, the wife is not supposed to stay with him. So she has to return home if she's still alive and live a life of austerity. Now, the point of discussion is that we can discuss later is what if the husband is not following spiritual and regulatory principles? He's just like any husband, like normal material husband. Is it still a woman's duty or religious principle to serve her husband in all conditions? We'll discuss at the end if we have time on this. Lamentation and funeral. Seeing her merciful husband's body without any symptoms of life, she lamented for a while and then placed his body on the funeral pyre. Why did she lament only for a limited time? Because she was well versed in the spiritual aspects of life. So Bhagavad Gita 2:13 mentioned, Dehino asmin yata dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tata dehantara prapti dhira satrana muyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. So, although we have some lamentation because there is somebody close to us, maybe it's a real devotee, and we lose them, so there will be some lamentation. At the same time, we also know that it's not the body that has died, but the soul has passed away from this, and it's either taking a new birth or it's going back to spiritual planet in case of a real devotee. So somebody who knows that, they will not lament. They will lament for a little time because they will lose association, but other than that, they will be happy that they're in a better place. So Archie had this knowledge, and because of that, she didn't lament for a long time. Then she entered the fire. She executed the necessary rituals and offered oblations to demigods. She then circumambulated the fire 3 times and meditating on his lotus feet, entered into the flames. This process of Sahagama was voluntary, but as Kali Yuga progressed, this practice became forced and hence had to be stopped. So do you know any other person who did Sahagama, which is entering into the fire and the husband died? We took her name few minutes back, few seconds.
Yeah,
Madri.
Madri, and yeah.
Madri to get, right?
Mm.
Well, one more thing that you can see from here is that, I mean, like generally it's been like in our Hindu things, we generally say that the gilly should not go to the cremation ground and put the body on fire, etc. But here everything was done by Archie only for her husband. So it's not like somebody came and did it for her. She did everything on her own, right? So this is how she took Sagama and burnt herself and then followed her husband. So now next we go to the section where the demigod's wife prays. The demigod's wife prays Archie. 27 verse 8 verses. Somebody wants to read 23, 24?
Yeah, I can read.
Yeah.
Archie performs funeral rites and enters into flames.
No, so this is wrong. This is demigod's wife's praise Archie. I forgot to read. Okay.
Oh, okay. Title. Okay, title is wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
For 23 and 44, demigods praise. Seeing this amazing act, thousands of wives of demigods, along with their husband, began glorifying Archie. The demigod played instruments, and their wives showered the flowers on the funeral pyre. For 23.25, service to the husband. The wives of demigod said, "All glories to Queen Archie. She served her husband with mind, speech, and body exactly as Lakshmi serves Vishnu." In the Vedic civilization, the husband and wife were not separated by such man-made law as divorce. We should understand the necessity for maintaining family life in human society and should thus abolish this artificial law known as divorce. The husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness and follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan or Krishna Rukmani. Today, Rukmani Devi's appearance day.
Apparently, yes.
Yeah. So, in this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. Lakshmi, Rukmani, Sita, etc. all serve the Supreme Lord in spite of having 100% of the maid servants or devotees.
So, yeah, so Prabhupada mentions here that the ideal Grihastha should be living in Krishna consciousness, and the husband should be basically engaged in service of the Lord, and the wife should assist him in inner service, right? And and serving the husband is basically, I mean, especially if it's a devotee, is very, very like a elevated service because as it's a primary duty of the wife. And we can see from our scriptures that Lakshmi, Rukmini, Sita, etc., they all serve the Lord. When they had hundreds of maid servants in the Vaikuntha, there are so many devotees, etc., right? But they personally serve the Lord always. So we should learn from that. By dint of her inconceivable pious activities, she still, so they continued the praises. By dint of her inconceivable pious activities, she is still following her husband upward. This indicates that when Maharaja Prithu and his wife Archie abandoned material bodies in the material fire, they immediately developed spiritual bodies and entered into spiritual aeroplanes, which could penetrate the material elements and reach the spiritual sky. And they were also astonished that somebody from earthly planets, which are considered inferior planetary systems, could go beyond the realms of demigods to the Vaikuntha planet. So they were surprised to see that also. Nothing is unattainable. Earthly humans have only a short lifespan, but by engaging in devotional service, they go back to Godhead, for they are on the path of liberation. For such persons, there is nothing not attainable, right? And they were also lamenting that in spite of having a birth in higher planetary systems, they were not as fortunate as Archie to achieve the lotus feet of Lord. So one of the good things which we have read in Bhagavatam is that although we are in the Kali Yuga and also we are born on earth, the one good thing is because we have both happiness and distress and we understand the concept of devotional service, it's very easy for us to go back to God. Actually, it's mentioned in Bhagavatam that to go back to Godhead, and we have to burn all our karma in the material in this earthly planets before we can be liberated, right? So they were lamenting that they didn't have that opportunity. 28. Anybody wants to read the verse and the translation? Ashtasaki Matadi?
Yes. Savanchita bhatatma dhruk rachena mahata bruvi labdva pavargayam manushya visayeshu visajjate. Killer of the self, a person who engages within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining a human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult task of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of own self. 4.23,
No,
29.
no. So basically, this verse mentions that, and it's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita and also in Bhagavatam, is that if we don't take it seriously, right? I mean, after taking human form of life and also understanding what we need to do, if we don't take it seriously and continue in the fruitive activities or jnana kanda activities, then technically we are killing our own self, because technically it's like considering doing suicide, right? Because we are not really following the process. So as Prabhupada mentions here, that we have to ensure that when we have a chance to attain liberation miseries, we take it with full heart and soul, right? So so now Maitreya continues saying that while the wives of demigods are speaking, Archie reads the same planet as that of her husband. It's mentioned Pati Lokam in this verse, but Prabhupada mentions although there is some planets called Pati Lokam, but here it means that Archie reached the same planet, which is Vaikuntha Loka. The greatest of all devotees, Maharaja Prithu, was very, very powerful, and his character was liberal, magnificent, and magnanimous. Thus, I have described him as far as possible. So who is Maitreya Muni talking to?
Vidurji?
Vidur. Yeah, he's talking to Vidur. So he continues. Vidur wanted to know about the and dynasty of Swayambhu Manu. So now we complete Prithu, and then after that we'll go to the Pachetas, right? Next part of the next section of this chapter. Next of the section of this canto. So now last few verses, Falashruti. I'll just read through that. I don't know what happened to all my headings. It got messed up. Okay. One who faithfully and attentively reads or hears these pastimes. When I say this pastime means the entire pastime of Maharaja Prithu. One attains the abode of Prithu, Vaikuntha. A Brahmana becomes more learned. A Kshatriya becomes the leader of the world. A Vaishya becomes the master of other Vaishyas. And a Shudra becomes the best devotee. A childless person becomes blessed with good children. And a poor man becomes the richest. A person with no reputation becomes famous. A fool becomes learned. And one gains all auspiciousness and no inauspiciousness. One achieves wealth, fame, a long life, swarga, immunity from Kali Yuga's influence, and the result of all four purusharthas, that is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. A king attains victory, ruling power, and tribute from subordinate kings. Now, a pure devotee is executing these different processes of devotional service may be situated in a transcendental position, being completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. But even while discharging devotional service, one must hear, read, and include others to hear about the character and life of Prithu Maharaj. So, in this verse, it's mentioned that although one might be a pure devotee, but one must still hear about the glories of Prithu Maharaj. The conclusion: hearing and chanting about Prithu Maharaj enriches one's devotional attitude, faith, and attraction to the Lord's lotus feet, which are the boat for crossing the ocean of nescience. Thus, one can go home back to Godhead, like Prithu Maharaj. In the purport, Prabhupada mentioned this cosmic manifestation, which is compared to an ocean of nescience, is also resting on the lotus feet of the Lord. As such, this great ocean of nescience is magnified by a person who is a pure devotee. One who has taken the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord need not cross over the ocean, for he has already crossed it by virtue of his position at the Lord's lotus feet. By hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord or the Lord's devotee, one can become firmly fixed in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. This position can also be achieved very easily by narrating the history of the life of Prithu Maharaj regularly every day. So if you read the pastimes of the Lord or the devotees or even the history of Prithu Maharaj, then automatically we can cross this ocean of material existence and go back home back to God. So analogies. So what I did was that I was just trying to play around. I mean, I just like a couple of analogies, and I just okay, let me try to use ChatGPT here. So what I did was I put the purport, and when I put the purport, the ChatGPT started coming with, like, even for each and every line, it started coming with analogies. So I did few verses. I'm not going to read through all, but I will share the presentation. You can read it. But I just want to go through a few couple of things, right? So the first verse is when Maharaja Prithu was CEO on a divine assignment. So there was one more option. When I started putting analogies, it asked me Do we want devotional context to that? Answer yes, would be devotional context. So all these translations are based on the devotional context that ChatGPT realized. So just as CEO is sent by companies both to rescue or restructure a failing division, Maharaja Prithu was sent by Supreme Law to restore order on earth. After fulfilling his duty like a CEO, he hands over leadership to a successor and steps down. He retired gracefully, having completed his mission. Maharaja Prithu's life mirrors the natural cycle of seasons. His rule was like spring and summer, productive and active, while his retirement resembled autumn and winter, a time to shed attachments and focus inwards, just as trees withdraw their energy and prepare for renewal. This passage compares husband and wife as single unit in retirement, much like two wings of a bird. Just as a bird needs both wings to fly steadily, spiritual progress in retirement is best supported when both husband and wife pursue austerity and liberation together. So, like, we can read more on this one. Like, Tapovanas can be compared to specialized universities for the soul. Just as scholars go to universities for focused education and growth, retiring individuals went to Tapovanas to immerse in austerity and spiritual practice, gaining wisdom from the final journey. Retiring to the forest was not an end, but a launch pad, like an astronaut entering the launch chamber before being sent to space. It was a preparatory phase for the soul's journey back to spiritual world, Vaikuntha, requiring mental and spiritual purification. So there are a lot of analogies like this, but I'll not go through all. But one thing, this is important, like imitation as a wearing a crown without authority. So trying to imitate the forest austerities of great souls like Prithu Maharaj or Rupa Goswami without proper qualification is like putting on a king's crown without the qualities or responsibilities of a king. Without inner readiness, such imitation can lead not to liberation but to pride and eventual fall down, right? And then like trying to perform severe austerity in the age of Kali is like trying to swim against a stormy ocean. But living in the temple and following the path of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is like stepping into a sturdy boat with an experienced captain, Sri Guru and the holy name to safely reach the shores of Golu. There are many more here, but I will skip that and I will go to the main principles in this chapter, three main principles. One, renunciation and austerity as a path to devotion. So Maharaja Prithu, after fulfilling his duties as a king, renounced worldly life and returned to the forest with his wife Kunarti. There he engaged in severe austerity such as subsisting on minimal food and exposing himself to extreme weather conditions, all aimed at controlling his senses and mind. These practices were not ends in themselves, but performed solely for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Lord Krishna. This illustrates that renunciation and austerity, when directed towards devotional service, can lead one to spiritual perfection. 2. Supremacy of devotional service over other paths. Despite being capable of performing yogic and philosophical practices, Maharaja Prithu recognized that pure devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, is the ultimate goal of life. He realized that without devotion to Krishna, other paths like jnana, knowledge, and yoga do not lead to complete liberation. By engaging in unalloyed devotional service, he achieved complete detachment from material existence and attained the spiritual realm. And significance of the human form for spiritual advancement. This chapter emphasizes that human form of life is a rare and valuable opportunity for spiritual advancement. It is likened to a well-constructed boat with a spiritual master as the captain and the instructions of Krishna as favorable winds. If one fails to utilize this opportunity to cross the ocean of material existence and return to Godhead, it is considered a great loss. So we read here with categorization, our understanding, what Srimad Bhagavatam is conveying, and what Srila Prabhupada is trying to explain, the preaching application. We went through all those points. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the presentation. So please unmute yourself, devotees, and ask the questions you want to do.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavata Pranams. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very nice. If in nowadays, without taking Vanaprastha, how is it possible to attain love of Godhead? Just following the instruction of spiritual master and Prabhupada.
Yeah. So today
It's
we don't have
applicable.
I mean, like, I think in many purports, Prabhupada mentions that today in the material world we don't have really a forest. Right? Let's say we have Yosemite, but if you go and stay there for 2 days, they will drive you out. Even to enter that, we need reservations, right? And then they will not allow us to stay there in the forest and practice meditation, etc. Because the whole concept of vanaprastha is not there currently in this material world, right? So that's why Prabhupada mentions is that either find out like a temple where you can go and stay or make your home a temple. But the most important thing is that we have to basically reduce our family attachments and other material attachments. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for us. So the vanaprastha has to be performed at home or in temple and by the practice of detachment and attachment to and by following the principles, following the four regulative principles and the instructions of our spiritual master. So that is what is mentioned in the purport and the verse that we read.
Okay,
And that is the
thank you,
only way
Pooja.
for us here.
Okay.
Any other questions?
It's not necessary that husband and wife should live separately.
No, not required. Not necessary. They can stay together. As long as they are engaged in the service of the Lord. Like husband and wife still stay together and they'll be engaging in material activities, watching movies and all those things. But that is not the point. Basically, we have to engage in devotion.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So thanks for the presentation. I have to share. Okay, let's. Okay. Let's read the summarized version. So can someone read the 1 to 11?
Hare Krishna, please. When Maharaja Prithu became old, he divided all his property amongst his sons and appointed them to rule the world. He then left his citizens who were almost crying in separation and went to the forest alone with his wife to perform severe austerities. He ate the trunks and roots of trees, and sometimes he ate fruit and dried leaves, and for some weeks he drank only water. Sometimes he lived simply by breathing air. Prithu Maharaja exposed himself to extremes of heat, cold, and rain and would sleep on the bare floor. He underwent these austerities for the satisfaction of Krishna alone. Following that path of spiritual advancement advised by Sanat Kumara, Maharaja Prithu worshipped Krishna. He gave up yoga and jnana, losing interest in their goals, having realized that devotional service to Krishna is life's ultimate goal. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Somebody read the next one.
Verses 12 to 18. Maharaja Prithu sat in Muktasana and gradually raised his life air to the hole in his skull, giving up all material desire. He merged the elements comprising his body into the universal reservoirs of these elements. Then he merged each of the gross and subtle elements into the source. Thus situated in his original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up his body.
Yeah, verses 19 to 28. Although Archie Maharaj Prathu's wife followed her husband's path in the forest, she also lay down on the forest floor and eating only fruits, flowers, leaves. She became frail and thin. Yet, because of the pleasure of serving her husband, she did not feel any difficulties. When Queen Archie saw her husband had passed away, she built a fire and placed the body of her husband in it. After circumambulating the fire, she entered its flames, thinking of her husband. Thousands of wives and demigods, along with their husbands, glorified the queen's faithful service to her husband, by which she attained his destination as well as the power of devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Matra explains various benefits of hearing the narrations of Prithu Maharaj from 29 to 39, that is the first Shruti. So analysis here, it is given by Prabhupada. In 11, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the following example. If one has strong digestive power, after eating, he automatically lights a fire within his stomach to digest everything and does not need to take medicine to aid his digestion. Similarly, the fire of devotional service is so strong that a devotee does not need to act separately to attain perfect knowledge or detachment from material attraction. Because it's Krishna's, okay. Janati Asu Vairagyam. So explain why a Krishna conscious person does not need to go to the forest. Can talk about it. List, that's the question Sugopi Mataji was asking. So list some of the austerities executed by Prithu Maharaj and the Gyanis and Yogis. Moving fire, water, cold water, etc. Right? Why a Krishna conscious person is most intelligent? 7 you'll find out. Krishna Bhakta Ati Chatura. Because they know the goal of life. What is the aim of pranayam? Peaceful. Why did Prithu Maharaj, an eternally pure devotee of the Lord, adopt the process of devotional service? He also Saktavis avatar, right? Explain the purpose of the yogic process practiced by Prithu Maharaj at the time of death. How did Maharaj Prithu accelerate his return to Godhead? Retirement, Banprastha went there. Explain the way a spirit soul merged into the Brahman falls down again into the material existence. In purport, Prabhupada then mentioned very nicely. Explain the meaning of Prabhu. We call it here, everybody. Prabhu, Master. Describe Vishnu Priya Devi's austerity, 20. Because here Archi's austerity is there. Vishnu Priya Devi's austerity, what he does, what she did. She only chants how many rounds, that much of grain she put it. She chanted 125 rounds and she checked only that much of grain for that day for his for her prasadam. What is the system of Sahagamana? Sati Pratha. What is evinced by the inconceivable activities of Maharaj Prithu and his wife? And describe the husbands and wives on the Vaikuntha planets. They are also technically there. There is no sex life. Explain the term Advaya Jnana and analyze the distinction between the pastimes of the Lord and the activities of Prithu Maharaj. 38, you will find out. To imitate great sages, spirits also. We don't think the Prithu Maharaj is doing, I am also next to him going Himalaya and doing, you will die in one day, die for it. A spirit soul merged into the Brahman falls down again into mental existence. A woman's duty, religious principle is to serve husband in all conditions. Hearing chanting about a Vaishnava is good as hearing chanting about Vishnu, right? And the system of Sahagamana, which is the Sati Pratha, but not Sati Pratha here. That means the woman should follow if a husband is Krishna conscious. Abolish the artificial law known as divorce, Prabhupada says, right? So that people remain Krishna conscious, serve together. Woman doesn't need to attain high qualifications, simply follow husband. But we are giving independence to a 5-year-old child to think whether he is a man or a woman. Prithu Maharaj relinquishing his material body. Okay, so that's all for question answer for this one. So we'll have the review in our next session, right, on 15th, right? So we are finished the section C. That's a good thing. So now D will be going after 15th, 22nd. Or 22nd we'll have some break. Yeah, 22nd will be off. I'll be out. So we'll meet 29th. So 15th, we'll have the review, then take a section break, and D will start in 29th. Let me see. 29th.
Chapter 24, Glories of Song of Lord Shiva.
Yeah, on 29th we'll start that. 15th review, 22nd is your spring plus summer break, Sadhu Sangha break. Okay.
Oh, 22nd is break. Okay.
22nd is break.
We'll have to move everything by 1 week.
Okay.
Yeah, 22nd I'm giving you a break. 29th we'll have the D.
Okay.
Puranjanas. Okay.
Then Sugopi Mataji has to present on 29th, right? So she will be moved by a week.
Moved by a week. Yeah.
Okay.
Everything will be moved by a week.
Okay.
22nd I'm giving you a day out. We'll be there in Florida. Okay, I think, is there any questions? No, right? Please make sure that your group exercise, you do it, don't hesitate. You are almost done with D. So we will have it in June, the group exercise, okay? Probably 3rd week of June, before you go for the long July vacation. So 3rd week of June, we'll have the group exercise. So please make sure that you initiate. Okay. So if you wanted to give the part 1 closed book exam, you let me know. I can send the question paper. So whenever you're ready. So that's the thing. Otherwise, group exercise, please do. And we have not done quiz for part 2, or we did it?
I think
Part 2 we didn't do.
we didn't
Part
do.
1.
Yeah.
Part 2 we didn't do.
So I did for the semester 1 quiz, right? For this canto, only
Yes.
1 quiz.
Yes.
Okay, so C is done. So probably we'll do maybe 15th is that, 22nd is done. 29th we'll do the quiz for. Okay.
May 29th? No, right.
Yeah, May 29th, or maybe June 5th we'll do the quiz, or which day? Anyway,
June
prepare
5th,
for
right?
June 5th. Okay, June 5th we'll do the quiz for section C.
Okay.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
So May 29th,
Okay.
you will be presenting, right, Prabhuji?
Yeah, May 29th I'll be presenting. June 5th
So
will be the quiz.
May 15th review. Sorry, May 15th review. May 22nd break.
Yeah, May 22nd
Okay.
is a break. Yeah.
Okay.
June 5th is the quiz.
Yeah. So Sugapi Mataji, you have to present on June 5th, Mataji.
Yeah. And June 3rd week we'll have our group exercise if it is possible. Okay.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
That's good.
Panchakalpatarabhyascha kripasinderbhya
Patitanam
Patitanam
Pavanebhyo
pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki